Dr. Marcus, what was the biggest challenge that you faced as a Jewish serviceman in your career?
Your question, Richard, was the biggest challenge we faced as Jewish servicemen. In my case, try and keep this story brief. So I was brought up in Montreal in a very Jewish environment. Not a very observant environment, but being Jewish was something we took for granted. And I left that environment overnight, became the only Jew in the Collège Militaire Royal de Saint-Jean. We were perhaps 300 students and another 150 or 200 faculty and support. And I was 17 years old. And a small truth came to me that created this great challenge that followed me on. And that truth is, if you're not prepared to respect your own religion, how can you expect anyone else to? It seems simple enough, doesn't it? How a 17-year-old kid came to that, maybe there was some guidance from higher source. So that started a journey, my own personal journey of discovery of my Judaism, my heritage. And so my greatest challenge then was to keep true to that Judaism as my knowledge of it grew. And it's been a very rewarding challenge, but one that still goes on.
Incidents of anti-Semitism, and if you did, how did you deal with it?
It's interesting what misconceptions are prevalent among so many people. First of all, I have a unusual Jewish last name, Martin. Not too many Jews are called Martin. And yet, if I said I was working at the Jewish General as a surgeon or whatever, they would all think, oh, if you're at the Jewish General, you're Jewish. And I also happen to be a vegetarian for about 30-odd years. So naturally, when we got rations or we had food, I would say, well, I don't eat meat. They would say, oh, is that because you're Jewish? And I said, well, no. I mean, I appreciate what you're thinking, but no, I'm really vegetarian. And because of that, it was interesting to see the perspective. Now, I never asked for kosher meals or anything like that. I didn't even know if they existed. But in my later years, if I was on exercise in Canada, we never had this option as far as I recollect anywhere else when I was deployed overseas. But when I was in Canada, all of a sudden it became available that you could have halal rations. And I was surprised, but yeah, because this was the new norm in Canada. And that's what I saw was happening. It was like everything was more and more open. And so it's not unique to me to be saying, oh, it was only a Jewish issue. There were issues with, for example, the Sikhs, who I knew some Sikhs who had an issue about headgear. And they also had an issue. So it's not particularly that, oh, I was Jewish and I had a whatever Mogen David on my forehead, but it was, you could see that everybody is sort of the norm and everything is doing, and then all of a sudden somebody says, no, I want to do something different. And people sort of have a hiccup when that happens. So that's how I would respond to that. There was always a little bit of a hiccup, but then it was accepted.
As far as I was concerned, I was always, well, when Eddie was with me, where there were two of us, you were the only ones who were Jewish, and we never really had any problem with the Army as such. And I don't think I ever had anybody look at me as if I was a stranger, because I was one of the guys in the Army, and I had volunteered the same as they did, and every one of the guys looked at me as just an ordinary soldier. I will tell you one story, that when I was commanding my unit, over on Hillside Armory, and there was a change of command of the engineers, and there was a Colonel Wolfe took over the engineer regiment at that time, and we had a reception, and General Prieur, who is our commanding officer, called Joel and I over together and said, "Oh, come over here, I want to talk to you for a minute." He says, "Oh, I want to congratulate both of you on being the first ones to be the commanding officers of a kosher armory in Canada." And we looked at him, we couldn't believe it. But he meant it in the way that we were both Jewish and both commanding officers. And that's the only thing I ever had, as far as I was concerned. I didn't have a problem otherwise.
Thank you, David. We were trained from very young officers that there are 3 subjects that are not discussed. And the reason these 3 were listed was armies, units are always working very hard to establish and maintain very strong cohesion. That is the secret of winning battles. It's that cohesion that makes the many into one. There were 3 topics that could threaten that cohesion. One was religion, another was politics, and the third was, you'll understand, it was almost all men at that time, discussion of women by name. In spite of that, no, it's true that religion was something that generally was not discussed, and the Army is much more concerned with what you can do than where you worship on a Saturday or a Sunday or whatever. But as you can imagine, I've been asked this question a number of times. And the first time I can remember as a Major General was at a reception, and a woman came up to me and said, "General Fitch, did you ever experience anti-Semitism in the Army?" Maybe I had a drink. So I said to her, "Lady, I made Major General. If that was under anti-Semitism and you took it away, what would I be, Queen?" So I think I'll echo one of Dr. Martin's comments, that I think we were, the 3 of us, 4 of us here, many others in the room, we've been part of one of the purest meritocracies in Canada. And very proud of that, and you advance according to your skills and your effort and your accomplishments, and the rest doesn't matter.